around 10 to 20% of patients who are hospitalized, they get steroids. We all know that exacerbation of asthma, COPD, skin conditions, post-transplant, we give patients steroids often. So we have a patient who was admitted to us 15 days back, and she was prescribed steroid by a rheumatologist, and we will see how her glucose levels were on the steroids. So elderly lady, known case of rheumatoid arthritis since 2 years, history of diabetes since 24 years, hypertension since 15 years, came to casualty with severe pain in the wrist joint, so as to she was not able to do her routine work also. She consulted rheumatologist then, and rheumatologist, after evaluation, he advised her injection methylprednisolone 125 milligram IV for 2 days, followed by oral steroids, tablet prednisolone 10 milligram once a day for 10 days. So she had to receive intravenous steroids, and she was alone at home and suffering with severe pain. So she requested us that she wants to be hospitalized. She was on metformin 1 gram twice daily and glimepiride 2 milligram twice daily in addition to other medicines. Her weight was 70 kg, blood pressure was fairly controlled, and she had severe swelling in her joints, and there was severe tenderness which was present. On admission, we checked her capillary plasma glucose, and that was high. It was 243, and her HbA1c was 10.3. Her creatinine, liver function test, hemogram were within normal limits. So we have elderly lady with long duration of diabetes, with rheumatoid arthritis flare-up, and she has to receive steroids, intravenous and oral, and with hyperglycemia on the top. So as she was on metformin and glimepiride, and we had to give her steroid, now she is insulin naive patient because she has never taken insulin in the past. So as we have to manage her glucose levels, we have to first find out her total daily dose. So as per the guidelines, when patients are on steroids, we have to calculate dose as 0.6 unit per kg. And her dose was, her weight was 70 kg. So 0.6 into 70, so her total daily dose calculated was 42 units. So that 42 units we have to divide into basal and bolus shots. So we gave her, she was admitted in the evening hours, so we gave her insulin glargine 20 units and at 10 p.m. and her prandial boluses were decided as aspart insulin 8, 8 and 6. Because when we give steroid in the morning hours, usually the day sugars are high, and night time the risk of nocturnal hypoglycemia is there. So evening dose was kept little on lower side. So these were her glucose monitoring chart on the next day. So we gave her injection glargine 20 units at bedtime, and her fasting was 110. So the question comes here that she was receiving metformin 1 gram twice daily, glimepiride 2 milligram twice daily with HbA1c of 10.3, and she is getting steroids, and we are giving her basal bolus therapy to control her glucose levels. So should we continue her metformin? That was one question which I would request Dr. Arun Menon to answer.
I think it's nice that Sanjay has already discussed a very similar case. So I think the stage is set for the discussion, isn't it? So what we have, or what Veda has illustrated here, is a situation where steroids have been started on a patient who is on OHS and a very poor glucose control, as you can see. So that is not obviously induced by the current illness. Of course, maybe it's a chronic disease. So perhaps this patient should have been started on insulin earlier. In this scenario, what we have started is a basal bolus regime, as you know, what they have started. But you remember that Sanjay talked about a different kind of regime which we could give. So there are kind of two types of regime which
yes,
we will be discussing again. The fact that you could start in PH along with the steroids in the morning. And that's kind of the approach that we are moving to. Many centers are using that. And then persist or continue with the basal bolus. Of course, this patient has only been now started on the basal bolus regime, so that is fine. You can see what the sugars are like. But what we are looking at is a regime which should act on the hyperglycemia, which usually starts 6 to 8 hours after receiving the steroid dose. That's what you kind of alluded to earlier, isn't it? Do you want to add on to that?
Look at the timelines of steroid action that you're really looking at. This is a very long-acting steroid that you're giving, methylprednisolone, and then following it up with prednisolone. Now, the action of methylpred is going to last for a longer period of time. So even if you give a single shot of NPH in the morning, it is still not going to cover the rest of the time when the NPH action wears off. So in these sort of situations where you're giving a long-acting steroid, you have to give twice a day NPH so as to cover the nighttime also hyperglycemia that the patient may get. So depends on what steroid and the time of action of the steroid. Maybe prednisolone is not that long-acting, so that's why you can get away with once a day, but if you give methylpred, you have to give it twice a day.
Yeah, I think we'll.
Yes.
Sorry?
So basically, metformin we discontinue
Yeah,
if
we'll come to that. Yeah,
So you can continue metformin in this patient because it will sort of reduce the insulin resistance, number one. It will reduce the amount of insulin that you need to give the patient. So if you reduce the amount of insulin, probably a hypo rates may also be lower.
basically if patient has some hepatic dysfunction, kidney dysfunction, patient admitted in the ICU, then there is no role of continuing metformin. But here,
So either or.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
absolutely, sir. So either or. You can either continue metformin. You want to stop the sulfonylurea anyway, because clearly with the insulin there is no role for issue. That's all we can say. Metformin is the discretion of the physician. Only you.
So I just, because we are practicing clinicians and we want a yes or no answer all the time. So the answer to this question is yes, you can continue metformin. This is a soft admission. It's not an admission for a critically ill patient or with a fluctuating patient. This is a patient with rheumatoid arthritis who has got pain, and we are admitting her for glycemic management and general pain management. So this is a soft admission. Patient is not critically ill. What would this patient do at home? Probably the patient would take metformin and insulin. So the similar thing you can continue. So what we are trying to say is that your choice of insulin, it's not set in stone that, okay, patient 2 din ke liye has come for 2 days, getting admitted, you have to give insulin. Nothing like that. So you can give metformin. The answer is you can give metformin. Yes, sir. So we'll take Dr. Arun, will you reduce the dose of metformin to 1 gram once a day? Why would you reduce it, or would you reduce
Not
it?
necessarily.
Not
If the patient
necessary.
is tolerating 2 grams, I don't think there is any specific advantage by reducing it. If, of course, the patient starts to have nausea or some other, that's different. But if the patient is otherwise stable, why would you want to reduce, sir? What would be the reason? Of course, you can reduce at any point in time. I mean, if you find anything. But I think what she has said is that those are normal at the moment. We are not expecting it. Of course, methylpred can have some liver dysfunction, agreed. But I don't think there is any clear reason to reduce it at that point. I don't think there is anything wrong. Or if you want to even stop metformin, that's also still fine. So all these decisions these are all perfectly fine. Because insulin is a powerful agent. It will take care of it. But as Sanjay was saying, metformin will be an added advantage on those scenarios.
So again, I'm highlighting this is a very soft admission. This is not a sick patient. So you would manage this patient largely as if she were coming to the hospital, taking the methylprednisolone and going home. So metformin 1 gram twice daily, in my view, yes, I would give. I would not say you are wrong not to give it, because as I said, I can't quote any guidelines and you will not get a guideline on it. That's why we are having this meeting right now. Sir, your question. So I request you to come to the mic, please. I know it's difficult, but please do come to the mic so that everybody can hear you.
Already on the SCQS or not taking SCQS. In the case of steroid-induced diabetes, can the SCQS be added and be helpful in this patient?
so HCQS will have very mild effect. Though we can give it in rheumatological conditions if patient's retina is normal, but HCQS will prove as very mild agent, because steroid-induced hyperglycemia, we need very potent agents like insulin. So HCQS, For steroid-induced hyperglycemia, it may not work, but for adequately controlled type 2 diabetic patients with rheumatoid arthritis, no retinopathy, we can give it because it will help both the conditions simultaneously.
See, in the steroid-induced, when we want to taper up the dose of steroid, so while giving this treatment, what should be the insulin treatment? Tapering the dose?
Yes, sir, we will
we'll come
be
to that, sir.
discussing in
So I
next
think your
slide, sir.
question, before I get Sanjay involved in this, I wouldn't start HCQ for glycemic control. If my rheumatologist says he won't start, I'm very happy. But that's, so it kind of works both ways, isn't it? If they're starting HCQ for this thing, if they think that is good, that might help our diabetes, fine. But not for glycemic control, because we have got wonderful agents that we can use for glycemic control.
I was just going to add to the same thing. Also the fact that HCQ acts as an anti-inflammatory where rheumatoid is concerned. So any inflammation that comes down is obviously going to reduce the insulin resistance and the amount of insulin that you may require. So you may require to drive down the sugars initially a high amount, but once the anti-inflammatory effect takes over, you have to be very watchful for the fact that does the patient need so much of insulin, and your requirement may go down, so you've got to be careful that you're down titrating insulin requirement.
Thank you. Yeah, so let's go on to the point. I think the
Yes.
point here that Veda was trying to show was that there was a basal insulin that was given previous night. Now the steroids have been given. As we have pointed out earlier, about 6 hours later, so about 3 p.m., the sugars are starting to rise, isn't it? That is what is happening. So there's a reason why it is starting to rise, and that's what we expect. Now the question is, would you give a correction bolus there? What is, yeah? Will you give, so for yes, will give correction bolus? Oh, everybody will give correction bolus. Wonderful.
Yes, most of us will give correction bolus to treat the hyperglycemia in between. And how to calculate correction bolus?
Why not an NPH in the morning?
Yes.
I mean, that's what I talked, that your steroid response, hyperglycemia is going to be from midday to midnight. And this is precisely what it was showing, that the glycemic surge happened in the afternoon. So
Sir,
you can still give NPH morning and glargine at evening. There's no contraindication to do that.
So I think it's important to note that NPH is coming back. The point Dr. Sanjay is making is that NPH insulin, which we ignored for so many years, is making a comeback for steroid-induced hyperglycemia because its unique profile mimics the glucocorticoid-induced hyperglycemia profile. So that's a very important point. Even if the patient is on glargine, you can still give a shot of NPH because it will mimic the pattern. And if you see the handbook we have given you, we have mentioned that for hydrocortisone, we have said regular insulin. For methylprednisolone, we have mentioned NPH, bar detamir, bar glargine. The only difference we made it for dexamethasone, we have kept it as regular insulin. The reason is because there's a trial showing that if you give dexamethasone in the hospital 3 or 4 times a day, you may have to give regular insulin 3 or 4 times a day. But even for dexamethasone, you can give NPH, you can give glargine, you can even give a long-acting steroid, so long-acting injection. So the point, very important point, I want everybody to remember this point, that NPH insulin making a comeback for in-hospital glucocorticoid-related hyperglycemia and is fast becoming the standard of care. That's the point.
The only thing is probably as a caveat, if you find there's a absolutely unrealistic surge in the glucose that's happening post-meal, and there's a meal component that is contributing to the prandial surge, then that is not covered by the NPH. So if there is a prandial surge because of meal-related hyperglycemia, then that you need to cover it with the short-acting insulin. But otherwise, the glucocorticoid surge is controlled by the NPH and not by the prandial insulin.
So Dr. Agarwal, this patient, we started her on basal bolus therapy because her HbA1c was already high, 10.3. So as there is a study by Dr. Om Lakhani, they studied 2 protocols wherein one patient was given only basal bolus therapy and second category was given basal bolus therapy, and on the top NPH was added when methylprednisolone or prednisolone intermediate acting steroids were given. So would you in such patients give NPH in addition to aspart and glargine?
So remember, there is enough data on this. Whatever the baseline insulin regime that you give the patient does not change. So if the patient was well controlled on a basal bolus, as his baseline regime for control of his hyperglycemia, pre-steroid, you continue that. The reason you're giving NPH is only to control the steroid surge, and that can be given on top of the current regime. So there is clearly no need to stop glargine and shift the patient onto NPH. You continue the basal bolus that the patient is getting, and only the steroid surge is counteracted by giving an NPH on top of the basal bolus.
Thank you, sir.
So the message is loud and clear, isn't it? So if the patient is on basal bolus, continue that, plus add an NPH. And the reason why we are adding NPH and not glargine in the morning is because of the profile of NPH. I think that is important point. It's the profile of the NPH. The fact that its peak action would come at around 6 to 8 hours. So, okay? Okay, so at least at this point, we didn't have a chance to give NPH in the morning. So here you have given a correction bolus.
Yes,
Okay,
so
then
we have
we'll move on.
calculated correction bolus. As we are giving rapid acting insulin analog aspart, we have to calculate correction factor, which is 1800 divided by total daily dose. As per her weight of 70 and 0.6 unit into 70, we have calculated 1800 divided by 42. So this correction factor comes to be 42, which is 1 unit of rapid acting insulin would lower her glucose level by approximately 42 milligram per deciliter. Now, after calculating correction factor, we have to calculate correction bolus. So how much insulin to give at this point of time? So formula for this is current blood glucose minus target blood glucose divided by correction factor. So her current glucose was 310 post lunch, and we want it around 100. So minus 100 divided by 42. So it comes as 5 units. So we gave her 5 units additional aspart insulin at 3 p.m. and her pre-dinner was then 134. So we had to correct this 310 hyperglycemia by giving additional correction bolus of insulin aspart. So now my question is, what type of correction insulins to be used along with steroids administered in hospitalized patients?
So I think we have touched upon that. I think you can show the slides because I think this is something which we have already discussed. Yeah.
Yes, so correction insulin has to be given as per the glycemic profile of the steroid. Hydrocortisone is rapid acting steroid, so we have to give regular human insulin along with that. Then prednisolone and methylprednisolone we can give NPH, and dexamethasone, which is long acting steroid, if we are giving once a day, insulin glargine will take care of the glucose hike with dexamethasone. Any other way to give correction insulin as per different
Can I
steroid
just
types?
add- I mean, I think Sanjay had one point. Sure.
You've got to be careful in giving glargine because glargine has a very flat action profile. So that's why when you get a glucose surge, the glargine may actually not cover the glucose surge because it is very flat in timeline. Specifically, if you're giving less than 0.5 units per kilogram per day, it is total, any basal insulin is very flat whether you give any basal insulin. The peaking effect of basal insulin actually starts when you're giving more than 0.5 units per kilogram per day. So even if you're giving dexamethasone and you expect a glucose surge to happen, you're not going to cover adequately with glargine because it's got a very flat action profile, specifically if giving a low dose to the patient. So that is something that you'll have to be very careful. And if you find that glargine is really not getting you there, then you have to shift the patient on to twice a day NPH insulin.
I think that point is very well taken. Now, I just want to put a very practical point because not all of us would be working in settings where we have 100% control on the way the entire glucose control in hospital works. It's an ideal world where you can add NPH on a basal bolus regimen, which we do in our hospital and in Dr. Sanjay Agarwal and in Amrita, where Dr. Arun works. But if you have a setting which is a very basic setup, and if you have a basal bolus regimen, and if you stick to a basal bolus regimen, pretty much if you monitor and give top-up rapid-acting insulins, you can't go very wrong. That's what I'm saying. But ideally, you need to figure that out. And Dr. Sanjay Agarwal mentioned a very clear point that if you give dexamethasone, glargine may not take care of the spikes. For that reason, in our book which we brought out, the entire thing we've kept the same. But for dexamethasone, because of the very strong hyperglycemic effect, we've suggested give regular insulin round the clock as needed because we thought whatever we say should be practical and simple. So you will never go wrong if you follow basal bolus, but if you have a setup where you can control exactly the NPH given at that time by the nurse just before the steroid, so then if you have that setup, then NPH is the best. So I'll give the question to Dr. Arun and Dr. Sanjay. Premixed
I'll-
insulin in hospital. After that, I'm going to ask one more.
I think,
Okay.
yeah, I would discourage you from using premixed only because it's a fixed dosing and, yeah, that's fine. I mean, absolutely. What I'm talking about is in hospital setting, when you want to control that, it is very difficult to use premix and control it. Okay, there might be an outpatient. I mean, exception rather than the rule. I mean, we are talking about the rule largely because it gives you the flexibility, because otherwise you increase by 4 units. Both are increasing, so because that's the problem, isn't it? Your basal is increasing, your short, we know this. Your short acting is also increasing. Yeah.
Okay, there are two things to this. One is there were control studies which compared basal bolus with premixed insulin. The glycemic control is similar between the two, but the hypoglycemia is much higher with premixed insulin. All right? So that's one point that you always remember. Your second point, whether can we use premixed insulin? The answer is yes, you can, provided NPH is part of the premix and not the newer agents. All right? So if you have a combination of regular insulin with NPH, it will still work the same way. Now, as I showed you in those graphs, that with the glycemic surge that happens in the later part of the day, there is actually a drop in the insulin values early, which if you find that there is an early pre-lunch, in the first part, there is a glycemic surge, that will get controlled with the regular insulin. The late surge will get controlled with the NPH insulin. So that's how you have to always see the glucose profile of the entire day and then determine, can you use a premix or should you use NPH or should you supplement a regular insulin in the afternoon as we talked about.
I think we are running out of time. So we have many cases. We have 6-7 cases actually. So all your questions will be coming up in these cases. So now I invite Dr. Ashutosh who will be presenting the next case, and Dr. Veda will also help. So your next case. And please, everybody feel free to discuss, criticize, critique, because as I said, there's no one way of doing this. And we have Dr. Rita Basu and Dr. Andy Basu from the University of Virginia. We have Dr. Rajesh Jevrani from Goa, Dr. Anjali Bhatt, our former colleagues, all of them are there. So invite all of you to be part of this next presentation.
So I would like to thank Dr. Unni Krishnan sir. So we would like to move on our next case. So this is regarding glucose management in a patient who is on enteral feeding. So as we are running short of time, I will directly move to the case. So here we have a 69-year-old female who is a known case of type 2 diabetes mellitus since long duration. She is also hypertensive, hypothyroidism. She is a known case of Parkinson's disease. And now we have admitted this patient with a history of altered sensorium, reduced oral intake, and fever since 2 days. And also this patient had a history of urinary tract infection 15 days back, for which she was treated. And this is her current medication. So she is currently on a metformin, 1 gram twice a day, along with the glimepiride 2 milligram twice a day. Along with that, she's taking teneligliptin 20 milligram in a night time. Along with that, she is on her antihypertensive medications for her hypothyroidism and for her Parkinson's disease. Now coming to the examination, she is febrile, she's pale, morbidly obese, weight is 80 kilogram, she's tachycardic, BP is slightly on a higher side. She's drowsy but arousable. On her per-abdominal examination, normal bowel sounds are there, and rest of the systemic examinations are normal. On investigations, the patient's random blood glucose on the glucometer at the time of admission was 112. As we can see on investigation, hemoglobin is on 9.3, total count slightly on a higher side, and she is having significant pus cells in her urine. Apart from that, her renal functions is normal, electrolytes normal, HbA1c 8. Rest of the investigation like ECG, X-rays, ammonia, USG, and all are normal. So coming to the diagnosis, so diagnosis is a urosepsis with a septic encephalopathy. She's a Parkinson's disease patient, type 2 diabetes, hypertension, and hypothyroidism. Now as this patient is an altered sensorium, so we decided to insert a Ryle's tube and started on the enteral feeding. And in view of her critical illness and altered sensorium, we stopped her oral antidiabetic drugs. And as all we know, the Riles 2 feeding we usually give the second hourly, and it's very difficult to give the pre-meal insulin every second hourly. So I would like to ask the moderators, what would be the options for her in case of her glucose control? As the patient is on enteral feeding, what all options are there for her glucose control?
Okay, I think this is the case that Sanjay didn't get to present, I think, isn't it? he would have probably covered this in his talk. So what are the options? I think I'll open it to the floor. What would you do in this sort of scenario? So the patient is started on HbA1c is 8. We didn't show the glucose profile, isn't it? We
No,
haven't.
not yet, sir.
Yeah, so we just started the Riles-2 feeding. What are the options in this patient in terms? Insulin infusion, how long would you continue that for? I mean, the patient is otherwise stable, isn't it? Because if the sepsis is coming under control, of course, you can use if it is a critically ill patient in a ICU, yes, absolutely, that's fine. But suppose the patient is being managed on the ward, the enteral feeding, because the patient is on enteral feeding because the patient can't eat. So what would you opt for? 8-hourly short acting? Any other suggestions? Basal? Okay. Basal plus. Basal plus. What is left? Sliding scale. Oh my God. So sliding scale has been brought into the equation. So you will wait for the sugars to go up and then treat. So that is one of the options suggested. Anything else? Sorry? From there? Basal only. Okay, so those are the options. Shall we just show the options we have?
So we
So
have
I
the
think
following.
pretty much most things have been covered. Only thing we probably haven't covered is the sliding scale, isn't it? Because we don't think that's the right thing, but again, we can discuss that. But these are the options. As somebody said, starting off with a basal insulin alone or a pre-mixed insulin, 8-hourly, okay? Because we don't necessarily know the profile of this patient. It's not wrong to start that. Or an ideal one would be a combination of NPH 12-hourly and a regular insulin 6-hourly. Why? Because this is the easiest to adjust and get on top of, okay? And unlike a patient who is eating in an enteral feeding, you would actually go for 6-hourly insulin, because if it's eating, you can easily make it pre-meal and do that. But in this sort of scenario, you would keep it 6-hourly, the short-acting insulin, and the NPH 12-hourly. And you can easily adjust the dose accordingly. And as our gentleman was saying, if they're not going to feed in the night, then there might be some changes that you will have to. So it depends on how many hours feeding that the dietitian or the nutritionist has prescribed. Right.
Yeah.
Any kind of, Sanjay, because you had that case in your armamentarium, maybe you can.
Can I go back to my slides? I wanted to show a protocol which is there for the enteral feeding. Just in a minute.
Maybe somebody can ask
So,
questions.
somebody till then can ask another question till I get back to this.
I think there is a confusion about which basal insulin to use if a patient is on dexamethasone. I think that we haven't clarified yet. So if you see Dr. Om Lakhani's guideline, it is glargine. So that's a guideline that's published. But what the point Dr. Sanjay Agarwal was trying to make is that because dexamethasone has got very strong hyperglycemia effect, you could give regular insulin. So if you see both options are correct, you can either use glargine or you can use multiple doses of regular insulin. So that's the point I want to make. But if you see the guideline published in Dr. Om Lakhani's study, it is still glargine. Just to make that point.
So this is how actually we look at, because it depends on how you're giving enteral feeding to the patient. So it could be continuous, which is infused over 24 hours. There could be boluses, mimic meals, so it's a time-bound meal that you give the patient. So, typically how we eat during the course of the day. Or typically you may give a nighttime infusion to the patient, so a 12-hour feed that you give the patient. So this is typically the feeding patterns that you may get where you're giving enteral feeding to the patient. Now, NPO is something that you got to be very careful, because when you're giving Nilpar orally, a common practice that we give is dextrose insulin drips. I want to take this opportunity to say that dextrose insulin drips are strongly to be discouraged. The way we treat NPO in our patients is, if suppose you're giving, patient is going for surgery and the patient is going to be Nilpar orally, you give half to two-thirds the basal dose in the morning, and this is one indication to use sliding scale, where you estimate the blood glucose every 4 hourly or 6 hourly, and you give only the correction boluses every 4 hour or 6 hourly. So that's how you manage a Nilpar oral state, and you don't need to give a dextrose insulin infusion to the patient, okay? Can I go to the next slide, please? Okay, so this is how we give. So if the blood glucose is more than 140, you change to special diabetes formulas, so that very often, it can control it. Can I have the next slide? If the blood glucose is more than 180 on more than 2 occasions, and the patient is not a diabetic, and the patient has become hypoglycemic, then you can give a basal at 0.1 to 0.2 units per kilogram per day. You can give NPH 0.1 units per kilogram per day twice a day, or you can supplement it, or just depend on the feeding patterns that the patient has got, a correction with regular or rapid acting every 4 hourly. This is one indication probably where you can use a rapid acting insulin, an analog insulin, which has a short duration of action, just to overcome the, the meal surge that the patient may get. And you can, of course, adjust the basal as required be. Can you go ahead? Okay. And this is for patients who are diabetics, where you can give a basal plus regime. So you look at the glucose profile of the patient, and then, of course, you can give basal bolus, as it's mentioned there, or you can give NPH and NPH with rapid acting. So these are the different regimes that you can give the patient for enteral feeding. Can I go ahead? Yeah, okay. This was another algorithm based on the insulin-carb ratio that you can give the patient. So it's basically for continuous tube feeding, you can give premixed 70-30. You can calculate the total daily dose, where 1 unit will counteract 12 units of carb. So based on the insulin carb ratio, you can decide the amount of insulin that you want to give the patient and then adjust the doses. If you're giving bolus tube feeding, then you can give bolus rapid acting insulin to counteract with each meal that you give the patient. And then, of course, if you're giving nocturnal feeds to the patient, then that's between 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. in the morning. In this situation, you can probably give a premix to the patient at the start of the tube feeding itself, and a second dose midway through the meal. Thank you.
Request Dr. Ashutosh to complete his presentation so that we can, because we are running out of time and we have 4 or 5 more cases, so we can go ahead with your presentation.
Okay. So, as all we know, the target for the ICU admission is 140 to 180. And in this patient, we calculate the total daily dose according to her weight, 0.4 units per kg of her body weight. And then we decided to start her on basal only. So we decided to start on a Glargine U100. And the TDD for her weight was around 32. And as the patient we admitted like early in the morning, we were not sure whether she will tolerate the RT feeds or not. So we started with the 100 ml of the RT feeds. Thus we decided to give the half of the expected TDD in the morning, and later to decide about whether to give remaining of the total daily dose in a night. And also, as and when required, whether to correct the glucose level if it's go above 200. So as we can see, this is our glucose monitoring chart. And we monitored 6 points. So throughout the day, her blood sugars were pretty much in control. But if we see at the 3 p.m. in afternoon, her sugars became 217. So I would like to ask the questions, what would be the option for this? Whether we will treat this value or whether we can just ignore this value, as the patient is an NBM.
Yeah, I think what would you do in this? We'll quickly go through this case. I think we kind of discussed all that. So in this sort of scenario, so this is something like we have given a basal only so far, and now the sugars have started to go up at that point. Would you want to give a correction, or would you just disregard it? You want to give a correction. So, yeah. You don't want to give a correction at this point. Okay. Okay. Right. Okay. But I think we did, isn't it?
Yeah.
So let's, yeah. So we kind of gave a correction, and that's what.
yeah,
So because this is now becoming something like a basal plus, as I was saying earlier. So that's how, and it could become a basal bolus, established. Yeah.
So in this patient, we gave 2 units of aspart as a correction bolus, and later the remaining dose of the glargine was given at the night time. So the correction factor, as already discussed by Veda ma'am, so I would skip this because as we are running out of time. So we all know it is calculated at 1800 divided by TDD and a rule of 1500 for the regular insulin. So another point we saw in this case, we used the glargine as a BD dose. So I would like to ask the question whether we can use the glargine in such setting in a twice
Okay,
a day
can you use glargine BD? Are there studies to support that? Yeah, I think Sanjay is not a great fan of glargine, I think, isn't it? I mean, I think looking at his face. Yes.
Now, let me be a little provocative to both Dr. Sanjay, Dr. Arun, Dr. Veda, Dr. Ashutosh. Would you use long-acting insulins like Degludec and Glargine U300 in a hospital setting? Yes or no, or in between? Or is there some case you would think of it?
In between, I would prefer to use the human insulins, largely because I feel it's easier to get that steady state quickly, probably because of our experience in using it. I'm not confident of using Degludec in an acute setting. I mean, of course, stable patients, different. That we are not talking about that. In a hospital setting, somebody comes in with that, fine. Absolutely, I will continue those. But starting off either Glargine or Degludec, I would actually prefer the human insulins, human basis. That's my take.
Dr. Sanjay.
There are not many papers with Degludec, the ultra-long acting insulin, because one thing is the dose stabilization takes 72 hours when you initiate basal ultra-long acting. Of course, there's a caveat to it that if you look at some of the paper, they've shown that 70% of the effect actually occurs within 24 hours. So it's not that it's absolutely contraindication not to use Degludec, but there's very little data of using Degludec in the hospitalized patients.
Dr. Veda is our senior most physician and she's our most cost conscious physician. And you know Degludec and Glargine U300 are expensive and she's a doctor who always thinks of the common man or woman. So she's always telling me, sir, cost, sir, cost. So now, Dr. Veda, your views on Glargine in hospital.
They are true basal insulins, Glargine U300 and Degludec. So they would give better fasting and pre-meal controls. But when we have to monitor patients' fasting glucose daily and calibrate basal insulin accordingly, it is always a good idea to use Glargine U100. And we have seen Dr. Rajesh is also there, Dr. Anjali is there, and Dr. Ashutosh is also managing our IPD protocol. So we have seen that when we give Glargine at bedtime, the next day pre-dinner levels are high. They are like 200 plus. So in some patients, if we use Glargine at 10 p.m. and half dose at 10 a.m., that gives a better basal insulin coverage.
So let me take a vote. How many of you are worried in hospital use of Glargine U300 and Degludec based on cost? For how many of your patients cost is a concern? So we are in India, right? We are in India, very much in India, and we have our own patients, and if they are admitted for 3 days, I think a cost-effective insulin would be Glargine twice daily, because in hospital patient is willing to take twice daily. But I think there may be a case rarely to use U300 or Degludec in the hospital setting. In the OPD setting, no problem. Somebody needs it, can afford it, let's use that. But in hospital setting, I think traditional Glargine would be better. You can use Retimer if you want twice a day. You can use NPH. So let's stick to cost-effective Indian solutions. I think we have 2 quick slides by Dr. Ashutosh, and then we will go to the next case. Okay, very interesting. We are going to cover that in the next section by Dr. Rajesh, who is going to look at something exciting. That is the use of continuous glucose monitoring in hospital. It's not recommended, but on a special case, you can use it, and we do use it. And Dr. Rajesh is going to discuss, and there Dr. Rajesh will discuss the use of cost of glucometer monitoring. And I just want to say one thing, the protocol should be individualized to your hospital. If you don't have enough nurses, if you don't have enough glucometers, if patient is so poor that they cannot buy the glucometer, or if the patient is so poor that one cost trip of testing is 27 rupees and testing 6 times a day is expensive, test 2 times a day and relax your targets. Keep it 150 to 250. It's better than resulting in hypoglycemia. I'm sure you would have something to add to that. Yeah. So I think this is very important. Cost of insulin, cost of glucometer testing. Let's remember our patients first. And maybe if cost is a concern, let's test twice a day. It's okay in some patients. If you are in a very remote setup and if patients are poor, but once you relax your testing to twice a day, you will have to relax the glucose control also a little bit, because otherwise you may get hypoglycemia. So Dr. Ashutosh, your last few slides.
Okay, so we will move to the next slide. So there are limited study regarding the glargine use twice a day in enteral feeding, but there are studies regarding the use of the glargine twice a day in uncontrolled diabetes, and it shows there is a significant reduction in a glucose level if we use the glargine twice a day. And once this patient we shifted out of the ICU, she started taking orally, we can switch to the basal bolus regime, or we can start her on oral drugs, or we can start with the oral drug along with the basal insulin. And apart from the glucose, we treated with this patient for her sepsis with the antibiotics, and then at the time of discharge, we restarted her on oral anti-diabetic medications. Thank you.
So I think to conclude that session, before I move on and get Dr. Basu to come in, is enteral feeding, look at the type of feeding that I think Sanjay showed those slides which showed that is it continuous feeding, is it bolus feeding, is it overnight feeding? I don't think overnight feeding is that popular. I haven't seen that being used very much these days. But look at that. That's important to know. Just because somebody is in enteral feeding, just don't start a standard regime. Then you have the option of going for a basal or a basal bolus or or basal plus, basal plus or basal bolus. So look at those options depending on your patient. Ideally use human insulins, but as we discussed, there is nothing wrong in using glargine if that is what you prefer, you're comfortable with. So all those insulins are there, you can use it accordingly in these patients, but it's important that you give a little bit of thought into how you plan the timing of those insulins and the regime. Can I conclude there and then? Okay, thank you very much.
Sorry, sir, we'll discuss it. Sorry. Maximum dose of glargine, there's no maximum dose of insulin actually, because we've given up to huge doses. But you'll start getting worried at higher doses and look for some other cause of insulin resistance, but really there's no maximum dose of insulin in a hospital setting. You'll have to give more and more till you get control. Glargine. In OPD setting. Again, the same thing, but once I have had a patient who has taken 600 units of insulin a day. So she went for bariatric surgery and the insulin dose came down from 600 to 200. She still requires 200 units. So there is really so the patient says, sir, I'm using 2 vials of insulin every day, 300 plus 300, 600 units. So you'll have to give what it takes for control. And she was taking 600 when she came to me and she had been worked up. So that's a rare case. On an average, maybe most patients require about 60 to 80 units of insulin if you're giving basal bolus. So on that note, thank you, Dr. Arun. Thank you, Dr. Sanjay. I want you to clap for Dr. Ashutosh, who's this MD consultant, his first presentation on stage in a CME. Dr. Veda for a wonderful session. And now it's Dr. Anjali who's going to be there. And while Dr. Anjali is preparing a presentation, I just want our diabetes educator